Scotland and the Northern Isles, we'll see some good spells of sunshine, mainly dry weather today, and temperatures lifting to 14 or 15 in the Northern Isles, 22 perhaps around the Moray Firth, but that heat builds in the south over the weekend.
Thank you, Helen. You're listening to Today on Radio 4 with Nick Robinson in London and Anna Foster in Salford. Good morning, it's 8 o'clock on Friday, the 3rd of July. The headlines today: Andy Burnham has ruled out what he called crude cuts to welfare if he becomes Prime Minister. As this businessman, leading a government drive to reduce unemployment, tells us that supporting more people with long-term sickness into jobs would deliver growth that's hiding in plain sight. The Foreign Secretary has warned that the city of Al Obeid must not become the next senseless tragedy of Sudan's civil war. And
صدق الله العلي العظيم.
have begun paying their respects to Iran's late Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei at the start of several days of events to mark his killing back in February. We'll bring you a special report from inside Iran.
Also coming up in the next hour.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
The discovery of a vanishingly rare copy of those words, the Declaration of Independence, the only one outside the United States, which lay undiscovered in our National Archive for centuries before being discovered by a volunteer. And as the great Venus and Serena prepare for their doubles comeback at Wimbledon this week, what is it like to work with your sibling? All that after the BBC News, read for us this morning by Vijay Ellis.
The author of a major government-backed review aimed at boosting the workforce has told this programme that tackling unemployment linked to long-term illness will unlock economic growth that's hiding in plain sight. The former John Lewis chairman, Sir Charlie Mayfield, who's leading the Get Britain Working Task Force, says economic inactivity as a result of sickness or disability costs the UK £212 billion a year. 250 major employers are now working with him to stop people dropping out of the workforce. Here's our employment correspondent, Zoe Conway.
The UK economy is desperately in need of growth. Sir Charlie Mayfield argues that one way to stimulate it is to prevent people from dropping out of work. There are 33 million working adults in the UK, he says, and nearly 3 million not working because of ill health.
If we could just get a 1% improvement on that number, you would add something the equivalent of Cardiff as a city to the workforce. And you wouldn't have had to build a single house. You wouldn't have to open a new channel of immigration. You wouldn't have to wait for a cohort of young people to join the workplace. This is basically growth hiding in plain sight.
Sir Charlie says that government will need to ensure that workplaces have access to affordable healthcare, especially small businesses. And employers should be rewarded for supporting their employees to stay healthy. But he doesn't spell out how the cost of this should be met.
The United Nations Human Rights Council will meet in Geneva in the next hour to hold an emergency debate on Sudan's civil war as concerns grow about the threat of mass civilian casualties in the city of El Obeid. The Foreign Secretary, Yvette Cooper, has warned that El Obeid must not become the scene of what she called the next senseless tragedy after thousands of people were killed by paramilitary RSF fighters in the city of El Fasher last year. Imogen Folks reports from Geneva.
What's happening in El Obeid bears chilling similarities to what happened in El Fasher. The city is surrounded. Civilians are attacked if they try to leave, but the means to survive in El Obeid are being destroyed. Water and power supplies, hospitals, even UN food convoys. When El Fasher fell to the Rapid Support Forces last October, thousands of civilians were slaughtered in what both the UN and Amnesty International say were crimes against humanity. The UN Human Rights Chief warned 3 weeks ago El Obeid's 500,000 civilians were at risk of the same atrocities. But the UN Human Rights Council has no prosecuting powers and no peacekeepers. The UN issued warnings before the slaughter in El Fasher too, to no avail.
Iran has begun several days of public mourning and funeral processions for its former supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, who was killed at the start of the war launched by the US and Israel in February. Representatives from countries including Russia and China are expected to attend the events this morning ahead of his burial in his hometown of Mashhad next Thursday. Here's our diplomatic correspondent, Caroline Hawley.
This is a hugely important moment for the Iranian regime, which has survived a war meant to have swept it into the history books. One senior cleric described the events of the next few days as a referendum for the Islamic Republic. And the authorities are planning to mobilise millions of their supporters in a massive show of public allegiance. Food, transport and accommodation will be laid on. But millions more will stay at home. The month before Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was assassinated, a nationwide uprising against his rule was crushed with unprecedented ferocity and thousands of deaths. His son, Mujtaba, who succeeded him, has yet to be seen in public, but images of the two men are everywhere. Security has been tightened, and Iran's military has warned Israel and the US not to attack the country during what state media has called the funeral of the century.
Andy Burnham has said there is room for movement on tax if he becomes Prime Minister, despite his pledge to stick to Labour's manifesto promises. Mr Burnham also insisted he would not make what he called crude cuts to benefits. Here's our political correspondent, Nick Eartley.
In his first interview since Sir Keir Starmer announced he was standing down, the man who's almost certain to replace him as Prime Minister pledged he would not be indisciplined when it comes to public finances. Mr Burnham has pledged to stick to Labour's manifesto, which, among other things, ruled out increases in income tax, national insurance and VAT. But Mr Burnham did say he thought there was some room for movement on tax. He highlighted his proposals to increase business rates on warehouses and major developments on the outskirts of cities to allow for a cut to rates for pubs.
The National Crime Agency says it's uncovered truly international online networks of men drugging and sexually abusing women. Officers say there are 14 separate investigations ongoing in the UK and overseas, and that British police have arrested at least 8 people. The agency's Deputy Director, Nigel Leary, told us perpetrators were coordinating their offending on the internet.
That content might be information about sedatives and drugs to administer to incapacitate somebody, but it might also be videos and evidence of rape and sexual abuse that has occurred. But what they're then doing is pivoting from that online discussion and collaboration into direct offline coordination to facilitate the rape and abuse of individual victims and survivors who may be unaware that they are being targeted.
A study by the RSPB suggests it will take more than 20 years for 2 of the world's largest gannet colonies to recover from a devastating outbreak of bird flu in 2022. The research, published in the journal Biological Conservation, says the disease dealt an unprecedented, deadly blow to gannets nesting at the sites in eastern Scotland and southwest Wales. Our rural affairs correspondent Jenny Kumar reports.
The government described the 2022 bird flu outbreak as the worst ever in the UK. This study by the RSPB found the increased death rate caused by the disease reduced the colony of adult breeding northern gannets on Bassrock Island in eastern Scotland by a quarter. At Grassholm in southwest Wales, the colony reduced by 40%. Modelling suggests the numbers won't recover to what they should have been until 2041 at the earliest.
A campaign to get thousands of people to walk a marathon a month in exchange for rewards will be launched next year in a partnership between NHS England and the founder of the Great North Run, Sir Brendan Foster. Those signing up will be encouraged to walk for 30 minutes each day and record their stats online. The pop star Taylor Swift and the American football player Travis Kelce are expected to celebrate their wedding with a party at New York's Madison Square Garden this evening. Unconfirmed reports in the US media suggest that the couple may have already married in a private ceremony. Our correspondent Neto Tawfiq reports from New York.
As excitement builds ahead of the most anticipated celebrity wedding in recent U.S. history, all efforts were made to hide those arriving at Madison Square Garden last night. Aerial footage showed black SUVs driving inside a white canopy tent, as around 100 close relatives and friends reportedly attended a pre-party to kick off Taylor Swift's bridal era. A much larger celebration is said to be planned tonight, with 1,000 guests, including stars from the world of entertainment and sport. Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce are yet to comment on reports about their wedding, meaning doubts remain that this could be the scene of their celebrations, but all signs suggest that it is.
A rare copy of the U.S. Declaration of Independence has been discovered at the National Archives in Kew. The 250-year-old document was found in February by a volunteer, as Tim Muffet reports.
The United States Declaration of Independence formally cut ties between Great Britain and its 13 American colonies. With the Revolutionary War underway, it spoke of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It listed grievances against the British Crown. Copies were printed to help spread the word, some in Exeter, in New Hampshire. Of that batch, until now, only 10 were thought to still exist. But a National Archives volunteer discovered an 11th copy earlier this year, hidden amongst papers seized by the Royal Navy 250 years ago.
Tim Muffet reporting.
Thank you, Vijay. It's 10 minutes past 8. It's being described as the funeral of the century by Iran's media, the long-delayed commemoration of its former supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who was killed by powerful US and Israeli strikes on his secure compound on the very first day of the war back in February.
صدق الله العلي العظيم.
Well, that's the sound of the ceremony now underway. International representatives from Pakistan, Russia, China, India